Welcome to the Blanco Wellness Podcast. Thank you for being here. Settle in. Take one slow breath. And let this moment be exactly where we begin. Not somewhere ahead of it. Have you ever reached the end of a week and genuinely struggled to account for where it went? Monday arrived, and then somehow it was Friday, and the days in between feel less like days you lived through, and more like a sequence of things you got through. A month passes this way, then a season, then, if you step back far enough, a year. And when you try to locate yourself inside it, you find mostly tasks completed, problems managed, obligations met, and very little of what you would actually call experience. Most people assume this happens because they are too busy. Busyness is part of it. But it is not the whole answer. The deeper question is this: where was your attention while all of it was happening? The body may have been at the breakfast table, but the mind was already sorting through the morning's first problems. The body may have been driving home at the end of the day, but the mind was still inside an exchange from 3 hours earlier, replaying it with slight variations, looking for what should have been said differently. The body lay in bed in the dark, but the mind was already in tomorrow, rehearsing it, worrying it into shape. The result is something genuinely strange. Life happened, and you were physically present for almost all of it, yet you were somewhere else for most of it at the same time. There is a story that appears in many different forms across many different cultures, and it has survived because it describes something almost universally true. A man spends years searching for treasure, traveling widely, following rumors, crossing difficult terrain, giving the search everything he has. Decades pass. He grows older and more tired and finds nothing. Eventually, he returns to the house where he grew up, needing to repair something in the floor. He lifts a board, and there is the chest. The treasure was beneath his own floor the entire time. It was there when he left, and it was there, patient and undisturbed, when he finally returned. The story is not about foolishness. It is about a very common human orientation toward life. The assumption that what we are actually looking for, peace, contentment, the sense that life is finally as it should be, exists somewhere slightly ahead of where we currently are. When I get past this difficult period, we tell ourselves, then I can rest. When I reach that goal, then I will feel complete. When things finally settle, then my actual life can properly begin. The mind generates a destination, and when that destination is reached, it generates another, and the present moment remains perpetually a waiting room, a place to pass through on the way to somewhere that keeps moving. The Taoists observed this pattern with considerable precision and found it puzzling, because nothing in the natural world behaves this way. A river does not rush toward the ocean with anxious urgency, does not spend its journey wishing it were already at the sea. It moves through the landscape before it, fully occupying each stretch of ground it passes through, and it arrives, always, without exception, not because it hurried, but because it never stopped. A tree does not spend spring thinking about autumn. It grows, continuously and without impatience, according to the conditions of the season it is actually in. Everything in the natural world has what the Taoists called ziran, the quality of being completely, naturally, unself-consciously itself, in whatever moment it is in. Human beings alone seem capable of being somewhere other than where they are. The Buddhist teachings on this make a distinction that is worth understanding clearly. They describe the mind as having two primary directions of escape from the present: backward into the past, which cannot be changed, and forward into the future, which does not yet exist. Both directions have their legitimate uses. Memory allows learning, and planning allows preparation. The difficulty arises when these become the default setting, when the present moment exists not as the actual site of life, but as a corridor connecting a past being replayed to a future being rehearsed. The corridor is where most of daily life actually occurs. Very few people spend much time, actually, in the room. The Zen tradition addresses this with a directness that is almost startling in its simplicity. When walking, walk. When eating, eat. That is the whole instruction. It sounds obvious, until you honestly examine how rarely it is followed. How often the walking is accompanied by a running commentary about something entirely unrelated to walking. How rarely a meal is given the full attention of the person eating it. How consistently the mind is somewhere other than where the body is. The practice of presence is not the elimination of thought. It is the repeated, patient, unglamorous act of noticing that the mind has drifted and bringing it back, not once dramatically, but many times, in the ordinary moments of an ordinary day, without making the drifting into a failure. Think about the moments from your own life that you remember most vividly. Not the milestones that were supposed to matter, the achievements, the events that were scheduled to be significant. The moments you actually carry. For most people, they tend to be surprisingly small and ordinary. A particular conversation, an evening that had no agenda, a moment of laughter that arrived unexpectedly, a meal with someone you loved, a morning that was somehow both unremarkable and perfect. These moments were not extraordinary at the time. They became extraordinary in retrospect because something about them received your full attention, because for some reason, in those moments, you were actually there. This is worth taking seriously. The moments that end up mattering in a human life tend not to be the ones that were scheduled to matter. They tend to be the ones where presence arrived, where attention genuinely landed, where you were fully inside the experience rather than observing it from behind the glass of everything else on your mind. And the uncomfortable implication is that those moments are available far more often than most people realize. Available in the ordinary Tuesday morning, in the unremarkable drive home, in the brief conversation that could be either half heard or fully received. The difference between a life that feels rich and a life that feels like it kept moving before you could catch it is, in very large part, the difference between presence and its absence. There is a reason children experience the world with an intensity that most adults have quietly lost. It is not that children know more, or feel more, or are more capable of appreciation. It is simply that they have not yet developed the habit of being somewhere else. The butterfly receives their full attention because they have not yet trained themselves out of giving it. The puddle is genuinely interesting because nothing in their mind is arguing that puddles are beneath notice. They are here, completely, unself-consciously, without effort, and the world arrives at full volume as a result. That quality is not permanently lost in adulthood. It is simply covered by accumulated habit. And habit, unlike talent, can be changed with practice. As you move through the rest of today, I want to leave you with a single question, not to answer right now, but to carry with you. If someone had filmed your life this past week, not the tasks and the deadlines and the scrolling, but the actual texture of your days, the conversations, the meals, the small moments between obligations, how much of it would you recognize as genuinely yours? How much of it would you remember as life, rather than as time that passed while you were waiting for life to begin? If the question feels uncomfortable, pay attention to that discomfort. It may be pointing towards something worth listening to. The ordinary day you are in right now will one day be the past. What is unremarkable about it today? may be exactly what you reach for when you try to remember what this period of your life actually felt like. You are already inside the life you have been waiting for. The question is only whether you are looking up long enough to notice it. Thank you for being here with me today. Until next time, be well.